Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
Celebrating 9 years of podcast excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Here we go, episode 732 of the Wrestling is Real podcast. There's a lot of things going on this week. A pretty busy lineup of news and things that are going on. First off, with WWE, they have briefcases and belts being pushed aside for the bigger picture. And I agree with what they're doing. And I'm going to explain why. Because people can look at the Money in the Bank cash in. When we talked for weeks here on this program, for months, that once Triple H took in, that main event picture had to still be rectified. So they put Austin Theory aside anyway, and he still had that Money in the Bank briefcase. And it's not against the normal conception that the Money in the Bank briefcase is going to get screwed up. I mean, 2020 had Otis. And remember, they had it where he lost it on a lawsuit to The Miz. Look, people want to put the Money in the Bank briefcase at such a high standard. I got it. But it's pretty obvious that Triple H does not see Austin Theory as a world champion right now. So why is he holding that briefcase? So they go against everything when it comes to the world title. We're not going to go against Roman Reigns. The whole storyline of Austin Theory going after, neglected, not even thought about. Instead, Austin Theory cashes in for the U.S. title. And it's a title he's already had. Which doesn't make sense, but they're going to do this. And he loses to Seth Rollins. So Seth Rollins continues to hold that belt strong. And then after that, you had a whole blowout with Bobby Lashley going after everybody and now on a rampage. But that's what they did. Does it make sense? Well, we'll talk about that. We'll go through what this is all about and what this really means overall. But I just don't think people need to go ahead and be so serious about it. I don't take it that serious. I don't think that maybe Triple H doesn't want to have that Money in the Bank briefcase matter in a pay-per-view. Maybe there'll be something at WrestleMania. Or maybe there's something else they do. Because you're talking about a format that's been around for a long time. But if you're going to have title opportunities, then you're going to make the value without the Money in the Bank briefcase, if that's the case. If you're making it where the Royal Rumble win is what is the only chance to get a title opportunity, then that makes sense. But, I mean, they're going to have the Money in the Bank as a pay-per-view. It's obvious. They want to make it a big show. But they also need to go ahead and do it differently, where, you know, the last few years they put people together to be in those matches. It's just hodgepodge. The same people up there anyway. And the way they have to go ahead and book that briefcase needs to change. I don't know what it's going to be, but they have to figure out something here because it is a bit of a worn down idea. There's not many other ways they've been able to go and do something to go ahead and make the briefcase cash in mean something. And they haven't done it for a long time. So there's that. Because when you've had certain people that have gotten the briefcase, it doesn't matter. And for the last 2 years, it doesn't matter with Roman Reigns because he's had it. And so what we have now is that story plus the 24/7 title retired, thrown in like the WCW World Television title in the trash. Much like the women's title in the trash for WCW. That's what they're doing here. So there's some things there to be said about what that means, where the 24/7 title does not mean anything, the relevancy of it, and how it was used as basically a filler for a segment every week on Raw is gone. It's the things that Vince McMahon continued on. It's the last couple of remnants he has of his booking strategy that were negated by everybody out there. The idea of Austin Theory. Now, I will say this. That Austin Theory losing the briefcase looks bad, but I think it is a bit of a tarnishing on his character because I think that Austin Theory was booked very well. He didn't deserve to kind of get podged in with Johnny Gargano. and to get thrown into the mid-card all of a sudden. Because I think Theory was getting over. Given the chance, he was getting over, and whatever reason they decided not to do it. Triple H decided not to go and pull the trigger on him. But I mean, he liked him in NXT, but as part of as a faction. And Austin Theory getting his solo shot, I don't think he screwed up either. I mean, me in a match, I remember that it wasn't great, but still doesn't make the reason for them to go and just like drop it altogether. It don't make sense either. But they decided that. So those are the two things they have. The other thing I'm going to bring up a little bit later on, which is going to take a bit to unravel the National Wrestling Alliance going through a lot of controversy leading up to Hard Times 3 this Saturday. What a mess. A big mess right now for that show. I mean, not so much a big mess because the card's good. It's pretty good. But at top of the card, the person that roughly 5 years ago helped to build NWA back into a popular brand, and there's some fallout from it. Billy Corgan and Nick Aldis. We're going to talk about that as it leads up because there's a lot of back and forth about it. And Billy Corgan's been doing a lot of press for Hard Times, and he's been very vocal. So there's some things to be brought up about it. And I think the shakeup from Nick Aldis leaving NWA is one thing, but the way he's leaving is another thing. And then also, the company's already gone forward without Billy Corgan, or without Nick Aldis. Billy Corgan has moved on. Nick Aldis has not been put out there to go after the world title for a while. They were going to put him in the world title match, but they decided not to. But we know that division of the main event, it's a pretty old and stale main event picture. There's not a lot of young not a lot of young people that are up there that could be put up in that space. But I mean, that's NWA. They have a pretty older roster now. And some of those stars they had from the beginning of the early days of Power, they're not there anymore. They moved on to AEW. They moved on to Impact. They moved on to WWE. That's what happens. So with that said, that's all going on tonight. Make sure to go and subscribe if you haven't done so. You can do everything at WrestlingIsReal.com. WrestlingIsReal.com, where I have places to subscribe. Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those good places. Then there's all the social media. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that right there. LinkedIn, all that right there for you. And the latest news from the headlines that are going on up there. And by the way, this weekend, I will plan to do a post show for NWA Hard Times 3. I will make sure to try to make myself available to watch that while we have football going on as well at the same time. But I'm going to plan on doing that. So here's what we got. Starting off with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Austin Theory. And he's been made the scapegoat, which is what I said. It doesn't make sense, but that's the side to go and do that. It's a bad thing to see happen. But I call him the scapegoat for this particular picture. So here's what we got. Number one, Austin Theory. He came out to Seth Rollins' United States Open Challenge, which was supposed to happen early in the show, but the Judgment Day interrupted and led to a brawl between them and the OC, and the return of Mia Yim to accompany the OC to an eventual 4-on-4 match at Survivor Series, I'm guessing. Rollins cut a promo in the ring about he has elevated the U.S. title, and he's celebrating his 10th year in the company. Mustafa Ali appeared on the big screen to answer the challenge, but was attacked by Bobby Lashley. So, Lashley accepted the challenge, attacked Rollins, finished the attack, slamming Rollins at the announcer's table. And then before the bell rang, the match never even got started. So Austin Theory comes out to cash the briefcase. Rollins is going to be turning things around, but then he was hit. He was able to hit an A-Town down, but Bobby Lashley interfered and attacked Theory. Theory was knocked out after being put in the hurt lock, and Theory managed to get into the ring. Rollins hit the stomp and won the match. So, yeah, they tried to book Austin Theory to say, okay, Bobby Lashley was a culprit. I don't think they're going to have Bobby Lashley and Austin Theory cannot take on each other. I think Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley is the plan for the feud. So they found a way to try to, I guess, protect Austin Theory with the cash in. But as Brian Alvarez would say, he came out looking like a geek with the briefcase to cash in on the U.S. title, not the Universal Undisputed Heavyweight title, which is the title that you get for that Money in the Bank briefcase. It's not like we're doing option C over in Impact or anything like that. No, we're not doing that at all. But that's what they did here. And it's like, it's unfortunate, but they're kind of stuck in a spot. And then Austin Theory, they talk about he made history. He won the briefcase July 2nd. So they got all the way to November. And then you also had Theory also try to cash in on Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, but he ate an F5 from Brock Lesnar for his troubles. And then he also did try to tease going after Braun Breaker's NXT title, marking another Money in the Bank first, because nobody ever cashed into contract. And, they could say that because Charlotte Flair cashed in on an NXT title match. I get that part. So it's not without precedent. But it doesn't make sense for Theory to go after the U.S. title or the NXT title itself. That didn't really make sense to me. But that's what they wanted to do. Now, what they said was, if officially this is where Austin Theory makes history as the first cash-in of the Money in the Bank briefcase as a male superstar, by the way, when opting for challenge for a secondary championship instead of the world title. Now, we know that they had to do this. The problem is, the way they had to go and book around this might have been, I guess, the most logical and the most least painful way to protect everyone involved, where Bobby Lashley gets into his feud with Seth Rollins. Austin Theory is used to go ahead and create the means to take the Money in the Bank briefcase off of him. They didn't pull it off of him by any other means, except he cashed it and lost. So they did that. And yeah, Bobby Lashley's the one that did it. So you can take that part and go with it. And, Austin Theory and Bobby Lashley already had a feud because of the U.S. title. So Austin Theory doesn't have much of an upside when it comes to trying to push across and trying to make something happen. It's just like they don't look at him as a big enough contender to go after something. Like, my thing is Austin Theory getting the push versus a Johnny Gargano. Now, please tell me this. Why is it a Johnny Gargano? I mean, it's because of favoritism. Johnny Gargano, instead, they want to go ahead and help. They want to go ahead and have Johnny Gargano be the guy featured over Austin Theory, which might be fine for the indie crowd, might be fine for like the real hardcore fans. But Austin Theory was given a good storyline. They put him there with Vince. And just because of the rubber from Vince, they should have gone forward with it. His character wasn't failing. This guy could cut promos. He was getting over as a heel. People were getting on top of him. So they should have never done that. This allegiance to the NXT black and gold and saying, we're just going to go ahead and work off of what we think is going to work best from what worked in NXT and think that it's going to work on the main roster when you're putting you're hedging your bets on Walter or Gunther or Nikki Cross or Dexter Lumis, things like that. You just have to ask yourself, is it going to be right? They're going to move that forward, but we don't know yet. We have to give more time to see if anybody's going to sink or swim. And Johnny Gargano is one of those cases. I like the guy, but he's not a promo machine. He doesn't get any response from the crowd. Neither does Candice LeRae. In that 500-seat NXT Full Sail arena or the NXT arena itself, yeah, you might get that kind of response, but it's not much else. There's not really much to it anyway. It's just bland. We already have enough wrestlers that can work and they can cut good promos. Finn Balor might not have been the best promo cut in the world, but you know what? He got better. Right now he's doing with Judgment Day. He's really good. And there's a lot of them like that. But something here where Johnny Gargano is just going to get lost in the mix. What we need to do is make sure that there's some variety on this roster. There's some individuality in this roster. Remember, we're not getting gimmicks anymore. So everybody has the same kind of thing. They're just going to be like a little bit of a different personality than the other. But no gimmicks. Nothing behind the dimensionality of the character. So Triple H has to figure out what he's going to do to make that happen. Because they're not going to have any characters. I mean, you got Bray Wyatt as an ultimate character. But what are you going to do after that? you need to realize, okay, maybe some of those gimmicks, maybe some of those character type personalities are not bad. Having a gimmick to it might not be a bad idea. Because some of the stars they bring over, Johnny Gargano doesn't really have much of a gimmick. Johnny Wrestling, okay. Nikki Cross, it's more of a gimmick than he built out. Great. LA Knight, he built that out. Great. But other than that, I mean, when I try to think of the names on the roster that have come into the fray and have made a difference, like the one thing that is pretty good that they do try to do is, you know, the factions now, which is, I have said clearly that it was from the Tony Khan playbook, but seeing these factions together, Legado del Fantasma, if you want to look at Judgment Day, OC, look at New Day, look at Bloodline, there's a lot of factions, plenty of factions, and not necessarily a whole lot of people that are managers or accompanying to the ring, things like that. So there's a thing about that just has a bit of a deal to it. But these are changes that are going to be made, and they need to be adjusted as such. Damage control. What's going to happen is they have to work all this stuff out. Now, for the factions they're creating right now, and to build them towards Survivor Series is great. There's no problem right there. I completely agree with how they're going to have that built out. I like the War Games concept for Survivor Series anyway, as opposed to the bragging rights. Much better. You actually are giving me interest for Survivor Series, so that works. Plus, they used to always do War Games always around November, right? Or World War III. It was always around the end of the year. Good to have the right there. So you do that, and then you lead yourself up to day one, because they don't have a show in December, do they? I don't think so. So they'll figure that out, and that works. And then they did a thing where they wanted to get rid of a title. The 24/7 title, which has meant nothing. Listen, yeah, it's a prop. It was used out there to basically just, you know, let celebrities have a chance to win. Give some people some airtime. I mean, it served the purpose, but people wanted it to be the hardcore title. And they kind of did it like that, but it wasn't fun. It didn't have the hardcore elements. You didn't have the particular people that were always winning that same belt. So I get the part of the hardcore title. I wasn't a fan of the 24/7 title at all. And you couldn't take it seriously. It was just another belt that was just a prop. That's a prop. Much like the Money Bank briefcase now was kind of put as a prop this time around too. These are decisions I'll stand behind and say, okay, listen, I get why they're doing it. But in my opinion, you know what? Austin Theory and the way he was booked to have to go through this was bad. Like, if you just want to do something else where, I don't know what you do. You could have done something where he did something to create a penalty, and he had to go into a match where he had to go ahead and hold on to the Money in the Bank briefcase in a match, and if he lost the match, he would have to relinquish it. I think there should have been something like that where you had a decision, but you know what we don't have in Triple H's realm? We don't have general managers. Has anyone seen Adam Pearce at all since Triple H came in? No. Adam Pearce is poof. Him and Sonya Deville, they make a reference, but Adam Pearce is no longer on camera. He's been gone. And I don't think anybody notices that. But these kind of things are so cosmetic and so small that people don't really pay attention. I get it, because it's just not a big deal. But that's where a general manager could come in. You can kind of create a storyline where Austin Theory gets screwed, and you could find some storyline for him. But he did lose to Bobby Lashley. It was Bobby Lashley that caused him to lose. And Seth Rollins, after all that, got the win. I guess it works out. And as for that 24/7 title, you let Nikki Cross be the last title holder, and she was supposed to toss it in the trash, but it didn't make the trash. Okay. But it's indicative of what Triple H wants. He doesn't want that belt anymore. They just said, let's just find the time to go ahead and use this, get rid of it. And Dana Brooke holding on to that belt for so long. Remember, they did a wedding storyline out of that. Like, that was actually built for a while. But that kind of stuff, that's a Vince thing. They're not going to do those anymore. That's all going away. It's fine for that title to go. It's fine. So the retirement of the 24/7 title. It was introduced in 2019 when Vince McMahon felt they needed to do something to boost ratings for Monday Night Raw. So we know all the things they did with it. That's it. Done. It works out better that way because I don't get much of the take from seeing what they were going to do with it that was going to make it any better. So I understand that part. And this is their decision to make. But now where do you go next? I don't know. 3 years of that belt, insignificant. Decided to just go along and do something else. There's one other thing I guess I'll make a point of here, which is kind of interesting, because we haven't said or heard much about it. Now, I don't know if the company's going to mark this occasion, but as we know, this year marks the 25th anniversary of the Montreal Screwjob, the 1997 Survivor Series. And was held November 9th, and right now it's officially November 10th, midnight or so, as I'm recording this. So last night, the match took place at Montreal's Molson, now Bell Center, ended with a ref bump, a poorly applied sharpshooter, a new champion, and a departing star spitting in the face of the company's owner. And so I never got to watch this match, because you know what it was? This is the point where I was watching WCW solely because I wasn't much into WWE yet. When the Attitude Era kind of kicked itself back on, I started paying attention. When you started hearing things, I was like, okay, I'll go back over. 97 or maybe 96, I started paying attention somewhat, but I don't remember this because at the time, the cable boxes, they went from analog to digital. Like the pay-per-view and the cable boxes were doing that. So like analog and how I used to work before didn't work for me anymore. Well, there you go. That tells you how long that was. It was digital? Oh my goodness. Yeah, the Scientific Atlantic boxes, the black boxes we all had, they became mute. I mean, I had them for a couple of years and I watched every ECW, WWF, and WCW pay-per-view there was. Man, I watched them all. And then I got rid of it. But I did spend $200 on it, and I got more than my money's worth on it. And then I decided to go here, and I was like, oh, okay. And out. Done. And so if you ever thought I was going to bring up any nostalgia and talk about stories like this, I think there was somebody that asked me to go and read about this or kind of make a comment about it years ago, but I never did. I don't know. I don't go back and do a lot of historical searching, going back on the network or things like that. I just never do. But yeah, 25 years. It happened. Everybody's heard about it. I heard there's another Wrestling of Shadows, a new reissue of the DVD with Dave Meltzer and Bret Hart doing a whole documentary commentary alongside the actual video, which I did watch Wrestling with Shadows. You know, that's one of those, you lose your wrestling card if you haven't watched it, pretty much kind of things. Like the same thing with Beyond the Mat. Same thing with, I don't know. There's a couple others. Oh, actually, speaking of movies, I'll bring this up now. One movie I'm looking forward to immensely, and now it just got even better. The Iron Claw. The movie about the Von Erich family and world-class championship wrestling. This is fantastic. So, the Iron Claw is going to feature in the cast AEW star MJF. Maxwell Jacob Freeman will be in the movie. We don't know what his role will be, but it'll be his first feature film. Movie is set. It's going to be budgeted well. This is going to be a good full-length feature film. Financed and produced by A24. Sean Durkin wrote the script. Will be directing it. And we're going to hear all about it. In the cast, they already have Jeremy Allen White, Zac Efron, Harris Dickinson, Holt McElhenney, Maura Tierney, and Lily James. Yeah. This movie, I haven't had a chance to talk much about it, but it looks fantastic. So yeah. The idea will be, it's on the true story of the Von Erichs. The film follows the rise and fall of the Von Erich family, a dynasty of wrestlers who made a huge impact on the sport from the 1960s to the present day. From Fritz Von Erich, the father, to David, Kerry, Kevin, Mike, Chris, right? All of them. By the way, that's another feature I haven't watched in a while. The story of World Class Championship Wrestling. That DVD, such a good job. So good. What a grassroots piece, but it was done so well, and they got so many interviews. Really loved that. It's good. And so you got that coming up for you, and, you know, I can't wait to see how it's going to all work out. But MJF is going to be now put into the movie. And I'll tell you, MJF has the chops to be a movie star. I think he can be put in some roles. I mean, there's obviously going to use as a jerk, as a prick, something like that. Like, that's a pretty obvious thing. But I think MJF, it's a no-brainer that guy is going to be brought in here and is going to do his part. I really do think that. Oh, and by the way, I didn't know this either. He's represented by CAA and Activist Artist Management. Ooh, he's got representation. I didn't know that. I did not know that. So for him to do a wrestling movie is a no-brainer. That's good. But I'm telling you, there's much more to be talked about with this. But the movie looks good. I mean, when I look at what they have and I looked at what they're going to do with it, I'm looking at the people that are going to have in this movie and the whole cast. If you've seen pictures, the cast looks good. It really does. So the Iron Claw, they already have so much so far. Zac Efron is playing Kevin Von Erich. I'm not sure what to think about that. Jeremy Allen White, who was best known on, so Zac Efron, you know, High School Musical, Bad Grandpa, a bunch of other movies like that. Jeremy Allen White, best known for The Bear and Shameless. He will be Kerry Von Erich. Wow, man, there we go. And then they have Harris Dickinson. I don't know where he's from. He will be David Von Erich. And Lily James, I don't know what her role is going to be. And they already have several names that are going to be added into the cast that are going to be playing certain stars so far. They will have a Bruiser Brody. They will have a Harley Race. They will have a Michael Hayes. You know, are we going to get a Bill Mercer? Are we going to get a gorgeous Jimmy Garvin? Are we going to get a Chris Adams? I mean, I want world class to be seen here, man. The crummy Sportatorium. I want to see that too. Maxwell Jacob Freeman. That is awesome. Good for him, man. Good for him. And I'll tell you, there's somebody else I was watching tonight. I think somewhere down the line, people need to watch out for Wardlow. That guy also has something that would look, something will tell me that guy's going to do well. And he might get called up by Hollywood as well. I think AEW is down the line. There are going to be some stars that are going to be looked at that Hollywood will look at in the same way that WWE's been looked at for talent. Because I think they're going to look anyway for some sports stars, athletes to kind of go in there. Because there's a need for it. I mean, there's something where there'll be action movies, there'll be action stars, there'll be things that if you got bit roles and this and that, as obviously there's been stars from the WWE that have done well as part of that main event thing. And if Tony Khan is, you know, obviously he got, you know, the fact that MJF can do the movie, I'm wondering, I guess now, when the movie starts principal photography, when they have to start shooting him, is Max going to be able to go ahead and beat the world champion come Full Gear in a week and a half? And then still go out and shoot the movie. And that's what I don't know. And that the fact that they made that announcement, that makes me kind of question what will happen next week at Full Gear with that. But anyway, we got a pretty good setup when it comes to wrestling for the rest of the month. So we got Hard Times this Saturday. We'll have Impact Overdrive and Full Gear the following weekend. That's all good to me. So, and then we'll have Survivor Series the following weekend after that. Great. Sounds like a good old time. I'll tell you what. So that and Iron Claw looks really good. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to all turn out. All right. So for those of you now, I'm at the halfway point of the show. I'm going to go ahead and get into and delve into the NWA because this is a big story. Normally, I don't make a whole lot of comments about NWA on a regular basis on this show, but it does worth repeating. By the way, I'm happy to see MLW back. I saw Battle Riot tonight. Good stuff. Jacob Fatu now, once again, gets a chance at the world title. Do we see him go up against Hammerstone, or is there somebody else? But Hammerstone and Richard Hall, they need to continue that feud. But it's finally good to see that back. New episode coming up. So Fusion's back. I'm looking forward to it. Great. So what's next after that? Well, NWA. We got to talk about it. And by the way, Impact, I actually like the fact that we got finally got a breakup of Honor No More. So that's all going to get split up. You already know that Taven and Bennett have already moved off. Eddie Edwards will stay. And then I don't know what will with PCO, Vincent, and all that jazz, or Kenny King. Don't know what they'll happen to all them. If they're going to stay around or they're going to move off to other pastures or what. So we'll figure that out. But I'm looking forward to it. In the meantime, the National Wrestling Alliance. I'll admit it's been kind of tough to go and keep up with NWA and watch it every week because it is quite a bit of stuff they're putting out there. Plus, when they do their tapings, and sometimes they have USA, but then they do a different style USA, like they're kind of just milking the content they have for what it's worth. Well, there's a lot from there. So let's take the timeline of what has happened now with the National Treasure Nick Aldis. What I'm asking for, we start off with November 6th. So what is this past Sunday? Nick Aldis, the National Treasure. And I'm wondering if his move here is going to be something where he's going to find himself in another company. Because the thing is, NWA, of anything, has absolutely done the time that Nick Aldis has spent in the company has done him great. A lot of good. I personally think WWE is going to be looking at him. They need more star power, and I think Nick Aldis fits the bill. For a Triple H, I think he's going to look at Nick Aldis and try to bring him in. I really do. I don't see Nick Aldis going to Impact. And he's not going to make an AEW. No. But Nick Aldis, I think, he's one of those few stars that has not made it up there. The guy would do, I think Vince McMahon would have never picked him. But I think Triple H could lure him in. And there's not going to be a huge major contract. This guy has not gotten some real money spent on him in a long time. Just saying. So on Sunday night, Nick Aldis announced on his Instagram feed, his subscriber feed, he gave notice to the NWA. And PW Insider first reported in July there were issues between Aldis and Billy Corgan after Aldis was pulled from the NWA 74 pay-per-view. And Corgan said that Aldis had been critical of the creative direction of the NWA. And other sources said there was magma heat towards Aldis for constantly speaking out, thus promoting himself over the company. And PW Insider reported that Aldis made it clear he wasn't happy with the direction of the company. His deal expires in January, so unless things get worked out, it looks like Aldis will become a free agent. And I think it'll be. Now, they say it's going to be a big blow to the NWA because he was positioned as a centerpiece. No, he hasn't really been. They've kind of put him onto the wayside. Like, he was still doing matches, but he was not even close. Like, Strictly Business, the faction, has been split up. Everybody's going to go in their separate ways. Chris Adonis goes along. He was national champion for a while. Thom Latimer, they're trying to get him to be in the world title picture, but, or the national title picture, and that's Kamille's trying to go and convince him. So they're moved on. Strictly Business is done. The best of the storyline for Nick Aldis is when he has Strictly Business. Fantastic faction. But they broke it up. And Nick Aldis had a long run as champion. I mean, there's not much more for him to do in the company. I mean, I don't remember if Nick Aldis actually went after and built up any other young stars as the older talent. You know why he didn't? Because he doesn't probably see him as that age. He feels he's in the prime of his career. And you know what? He's 36 years old, so yeah. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And then there's a whole bunch of interesting information that's been talked about it. And so, we don't know what's really going on with all this. But there's the first part. The next piece we get after that was a story that I got from WrestlingNews.co, where they talk about that Nick Aldis and his wife, Mickie James Aldis, were both disrespected by Billy Corgan. So this is the other part, and I heard about this before. Now, Fightful.com will schedule to interview Nick Aldis, but the news broke that Aldis gave his notice. And Aldis noticed that Corgan's disrespect towards himself and his wife, Mickie James, in the lead up to and after the inaugural NWA Empower pay-per-view was a huge reason for the relationship between Aldis and the NWA souring. And also that's why both have never spoken publicly about Aldis being a top star in the company. Fightful adds several women who had appeared for the promotion felt disrespected by Corgan and Trevor Murdoch, claiming there wasn't enough depth or enough women for a second Empower show. And Corgan spoke with Steve Fall. And here's what the comments were made by Billy Corgan about Empower. I'm really intrigued by the interest in Empower. We continue to want to do it. We continue to have discussions with other companies about working together to create a fresh Empower event. The last time I talked about it, I created some headlines because some people took umbrage to the fact that I had Maria Kanellis. And I know Maria for many years, and I love Maria. But even Maria Kanellis is calling me out saying that about we have women and da-da-da. And then Corey went on to say that, quote, I think every company has the right to decide their level of standard. When you create a world-class event like an Empower, it was a world-class event. We set a very, very high standard of what you should expect. Of course, there are plenty of great professional wrestlers in the world. Can they wrestle the NWA style? Can they carry a 3-hour pay-per-view? Can they move the case of women's wrestling, not just in wrestling, but in terms of international media forward? These are my concerns. So everybody has their own version of it. That's my version of it, and that's why I'm still on that. Until we can provide a world-class event with some of the best professional wrestlers in the world, of course in this case, females on the card, then we won't do it. All this weird howling that goes on around, it seems very strange because you're taking a positive, making a negative out of a positive. That's so weird to me. Yeah. So, I thought NWA Power was fine. Like, I wasn't over the top amazed and, like, I gave it a good review, as a matter of fact. I know I gave it a positive review. NWA Empower was August 2021 at the Chase. And let's look at the card when we had back then. When you look at who they had, I think what he's saying is that Mickie James did book the show. And the truth is, I mean, they had some good talent on here, but like the level of talent I think that he's trying to say here. And also you have to consider that the NWA Women's World Tag Team titles, the tournament was put in there, and the world title. And they put those in there, and it wasn't bad, but like what happened was they did have to bring in other stars from other companies. And I think that it is difficult to put a whole all-women's pay-per-view together. It was done by WWE with Evolution, and it went well, but they never went back to it again. And it probably makes sense for that. Because we don't need to worry about an all-women pay-per-view just to have it. What we needed to have was, you have women's matches in every pay-per-view. That's it. And with NWA, they do. As far as I know, I mean, I'm looking at their card coming up this weekend. They got a pretty good card. I mean, you are going to get the women's world title, Kamille versus KiLynn versus Chelsea Green. That's a hell of a match. Very good match. And I don't know if Camille's going to be able to get out of New Orleans with the belt. And then you have another match. It's a rematch. Women's tag team title, Pretty Empowered. Kenzie Cage and Ella Envy versus Missa Kate and Madi Winkowski. You got that going for you. And those are the matches you have set. Like that is set right now. Good stuff. But for what it's worth, it was quite a few NWA stars that were already around and already kind of brought onto the roster. And that's who they worked with. And then you had a couple extra names. But when you look at who they had, you had Deonna Purrazzo come in with the Impact Knockouts title against Melina, which was great. But that was the only knockout they had. Like, I'll put it to you like this. If somebody could do an all women's pay-per-view now, it's Impact. I've always said it. Impact has the best women's division. Honestly, it's kind of, I will just say it. I think Impact right now, probably arguably, is at the same level of WWE when it comes to the women's division. I do. And I feel like, there were other women's wrestlers that you could have had at that show at Empower that, there's a lot of reasons you can't. Like, let me tell you, you know what would have really boosted that show? But of course she made her comments and she's been blackballed. Tessa Blanchard. The fact that Thunder Rosa wasn't at this show when she worked in NWA and, she really built herself in the short amount of time in NWA to be looked at by AEW. And then AEW offered her to work in work the NWA title at AEW during the pandemic. And Thunder Rosa got picked up. Like, that pandemic did not help NWA. We know about that. But, they did what they did, and I don't think it was a bad show. Like, it was a one night that they did, and it didn't hurt. Like, I think just having the difference when they want to do the chase, they want to do 2 nights, it's fine. When they do the anniversary shows, to put that on the anniversary show, that's probably the other thing too. Because that is that's a lot of money that Billy Corgan is putting on that show. The anniversary show, you want both nights to be knockout, but you could only do it once. And if you're going to do it again, yeah, it's going to be difficult. He's got to be able to get it where he gets more people coming together. Like, it's got to be a real effort. I don't know if NWA can do it. Like, I'll put it to you like this. If Conrad Thompson decided to do another show, and I hope he does, like, when we go back and do the year ender and we start talking about all the things that happened this year, one of the things I'm going to point out quite a bit is Ric Flair's last match, that pay-per-view, and what they did. And just a setup. It was incredible. I liked it a lot. And I'll just tell you, like, the quality of the card, what they did with the show, all the setup, fantastic. And I'd like to see if there was somebody, like another promoter could do a show like that. But it's already hard enough anyway to get enough good women's wrestlers to be on these shows. Like, Impact does a great job. They have the Knockouts division. They built it up. They've built it up over a long time, over a decade. They made it a staple of what they're doing. Like, the men's division and the women's division, I feel like they're kind of equals. The Knockouts title is very important. Listen, Jordynne Grace is a damn good champion. And I'd be hard pressed to say that she couldn't really compete, that she could go ahead and compete in other companies right now and do pretty well. I mean, I don't know if AEW would go ahead and pick her up and bring her on, but I think there's something to be said about Jordynne Grace where she does stand out. But she's she's definitely with Impact. That's also the thing where Scott D'Amore does a good job of, like, what talent he brings on. Because even some of the talent he's brought on right now with Masha Slamovich or Savannah Evans or Tasha Steeles, like, there's some good talent he's got over there. And I'll admit, like, the women's wrestling is probably a little more entertaining sometimes than the men. Because we get a little bit of staleness. But Taya, Valkyrie, and Rosemary, and you got Mickie James, you got Deonna Purrazzo. Mickie James also doing a little bit of work over there, obviously, with her retirement tour. Deonna Purrazzo, amazing. I don't have to, reiterate. I've already said it. I love the woman. I think she's fantastic. She's amazingly talented. There's a lot of great women's wrestling. I think if you could have a show that was a super show with all the women of all different divisions and have them with bragging rights, I would love that. You know what I'm saying? But give me some dream matches. Let's do a Forbidden Door for women. If Triple H and Tony Khan and Scott D'Amore, they could all collaborate and say, hey, let's let these wrestlers come in together exhibition style. Give me some matches here, man. Like, give me Deonna Purrazzo or Jordynne Grace going against the likes of, think about it. Give me them. Give me matches against the likes of Bianca Belair, right? Give me with, I don't know, Becky Lynch or Bayley or Sasha Banks. Come on. I would be all over that pay-per-view if you gave me that. You get Taya Valkyrie out there. You put her up against, pick. You could have her go against, I don't know, like Britt Baker or Thunder Rosa or Nyla Rose. I don't know. There's a lot of things we could go with. But I would like to see something like that. And then you do like a battle royal and all the women go in there. There's like some kind of a trophy, some kind of prize, whatever it is. Like, you make it something that's significant. and put that together. So the NWA Empire thing where you had other companies bringing in talent, that would be great. But I know Corgan had also a problem where Tony Khan took a lot of credit for the show being well. And Tony Khan does get some credit for that. But like, that's that part. The next bit of commentary came from Billy Corgan on Busted Open Radio. Let's go into that. This was on Monday. And so Dave LaGreca decided to bring on Billy, who's always been on that show. And he asks, what is this? He's working an angle. He's working an angle. I don't know what the angle is, but why? Why would you build up a company, put your name on a company, put your face on the poster, and on the way out the door goes, to heck with it. It doesn't make any sense because in a way he's burying himself. Why would Nick Aldis be willing to bury himself on the way out the door? Because he's doing something. It's so obvious. Now, Corgan explained that communication with Aldis has been good. That Aldis emailed Pat Kenny, who runs NWA Talent Relations, regarding his intentions to leave. And Corgan says there's no animosity. He just wanted to do what was best for the NWA. And the NWA owner went on to explain that he's known Aldis and Mickie James for a long time, made it clear that he was not personally running an angle. I don't know what to think about all this here. I just know that what we're getting out of this, I just don't see what, if this is an angle, if this was an angle, this is a shoot, or this was a work shoot, and they've been going on for this for a long time, they've been going at this for months. There's been no payoff. So I don't know. The next thing that happened, which probably isn't related, but Taryn Terrell decided to retire. She's expressed her concern about the lack of direction of the show. She was not happy with the company's reaction after she said her head was hurting after a match. She hoped to finish her remaining dates out, but is unable to. Now, she had quite a long career anyway, working in several companies, worked in the WWE, right? In the Diva Search. And then she moved along and worked in TNA for a long time, and there's it. So we don't know what's going on with Taryn Terrell, but you know what? It's fine. It was nice to see her out there for a little while in NWA. That's okay. But otherwise, there's nothing else to go with it. The other thing was a comment that was kind of interesting was Billy Corgan also was asked about, there's a thing about talking about ROH. So he was on Steve Hall's 10 Count show also talking about NWA Hard Times, and he talked about the possibilities of a partnership between WWE and NWA if the NWA could be underneath Peacock. On Peacock by the WWE Network. So he said right now, no discussions along that end, and there's some more he said, but I'm not going to go into that. Another question. If Tony Khan ever offered to buy the NWA? Now, what we did learn was that Ring of Honor was offered to Billy Corgan for sale. And he says, I don't know where I was in the pecking order. I got the feeling I wasn't first, but I certainly wasn't last. I did consider it. It's an interesting thing to think about, similar to what Tony did, create a brand that runs alongside your main brand, and maybe there's a synergy there that can happen. Didn't know he had that idea, but actually it's kind of interesting. But for what it's worth, I don't know what's going on with Billy Corgan and this whole Nick Aldis thing anyway, but they've gotten some legs on it. There have been a lot of outlets have been talking about it. A lot of the dirt sheets are making the point. Okay, real quickly, let's go and talk about NWA Hard Times 3. This in New Orleans, Louisiana. This Saturday, I will do a post show for it. So real quickly, the card, let me run it down. Start off. National Openweight title, MLW title. National Openweight, Davey Richards will take on Colby Carino. I will take Davey Richards. Question Mark versus Question Mark 2. One of them is Rodby and Mac. I forget which one is which, but I will take the new Question Mark. The one that's replacing the one that was before, whatever it is. Max the Impaler versus Natalia Markova. Voodoo Queen casket match. I will take Max the Impaler on the win. Because I like that group with Father James Mitchell. La Rebellion, Bestia 666, and Mecha Wolf 450 versus Hawk Terry, Luke and PG Hawks. La Rebellion is going to win the World Tag Team titles and retain. Looks like a vacant World TV title. Jordan Clearwater will defend against AJ Kazana. Jordan Clearwater versus AJ Kazana, and I will take Jordan Clearwater. Pretty apparent, I pick to take the women's tag team titles over Missa and Madi. Kamille, no question, over KiLynn King and Chelsea Green for the women's title. And that's one of those matches you got to watch. Everything that Kamille's on. And I was going to say, man, give me that all women's pay-per-view with all these different companies. Kamille versus Bianca Belair would be a dream match. Kamille versus Deonna Purrazzo. Oh, there's a lot of matches you could pick. Just saying. Kamille versus Thunder Rosa. Oh, I think we had that, but I don't remember if we did. EC3 versus Thom Latimer, the Control Your Narrative storyline, and I'll take Thom Latimer for the win. Homicide versus Kerry Morton, a rematch for the junior heavyweight title. Homicide turning heel and screwing with Kerry Morton, and I think Kerry Morton will win the belt off of Homicide. I'll take the Spectaculars, Russ Freeman and Brady Pierce with Royce Freeman at ringside over the Fixers, Jay Bradley and Wrecking Ball Legursky. The Fixers, who are the title holders of the United States Tag Team titles, I think the Spectaculars take the belts. The NWA World's Heavyweight title, 10 pounds of gold, Trevor Murdoch, defending against Tyrus and Matt Cardona, and I will take Cardona for the win. He'll be, again, champion. We'll leave it there. Thanks for listening in. We'll come back next week with another Wrestling is Real podcast because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.